Now we'll finish up the show with a look ahead. Plenty of darts coming up over the weekend and into next week. Starting off with the Players' Championship finals in Minehead, the last major stop before the big one. The draw's already set, so which first round ties do you most like the look of?
Well, there's quite a few, as we would expect. And originally, I was going to try to do like what we normally try to do, which is take one from each quarter of the draw. But in the end, I couldn't just pick one from the top quarter because there's no way to just pick one from the top quarter. And so I'm going to pick three from the top quarter and then quickly mention two others, starting right at the very top. Chris Dobie, the top seed, Nathan Aspinall, the 64th seed. And of course, you guys heard from the Asp earlier. Uh, a bizarre match to think that your reward for topping the order of merit over the 30 Players Championship events throughout season 2024 is to go against a twice major champion, including someone who was in the Premier League this year. But that's Chris Dobie's reward. Uh, it's been an uneven season for Aspinall, partially due to injury, but it's still a match I want to see because if he can fire, that's a match that could go 6-0 in either direction. They're both good enough. You wouldn't expect it to go 6-0, but they both have that ability to just roll out six legs on the spin and average 110. It should be hopefully a much more competitive match than that. Hopefully, they're both averaging 110 and we see 11 legs. Also, in that top quarter, another recent major champion. We talked about him, or I talked about him not that long ago today, and that's Mike DeDecker going against Richard Veenstra. And we've talked a little bit about Veenstra, but we don't talk about him that often because he still hasn't fully found his feet in the PDC. He's the 49th seed, and I think that's fair. He's a player who is at least should comfortably qualify for this event each year. He should comfortably qualify for the World Championships each year. But he still has gears to go through to start moving up the rankings. And having a deep run in a major championship is might be what he needs to start pushing himself further. It is a tough draw, being that De Decker is a major champion. He's won in the Players Championship circuit this year. He's improving, and if you're improving when you've already won a major, you're a pretty darn good player. But Richard Vanes is a player who can match him. I want to see this match. I want to see what Vanstra can do. And he might not be on DeDecker's level right now, but there's a game there waiting to unleash itself. Also in the top quarter, I'm just going to mention this one. There's no point to discuss it because obviously it's going to be a match worth watching. Luke Littler, Rob Cross. We've talked about both of those players enough over the course of the last year. We'll talk about them enough over the course of the next 390 episodes. But we'll go to other quarters. I picked out two other matches. One from the third quarter might not be one that jumps off the page if you haven't been paying close attention this year, but it does jump off the page if you have. And that's the 18th seed, Michael Smith, against the player who's 18th in averages so far this year in Players' Championship events, Dom Taylor. It's been a quietly good year for Dom Taylor, one of the breakout seasons of anyone this year, even if he hasn't gotten the prize money to back it up. But you look at who has beaten him this year. And, I talked about Veenstra just a minute ago. It's a similar thing with Dom Taylor. Last year, Veenstra, for the first 20 something events, lost to people who had won majors or made major finals or won European tours for 20 something events in a row. Not quite the same level for Dom Taylor, but for Players Championships 18 through 28, 11 consecutive events, the person who beat him was a TV tournament winner. That's 11 events in a row that you had to be a winner of a televised event in order to be able to beat Dom Taylor. He did beat a couple of televised event winners during that streak as well, but lost the vast majority of them. That's been the big reason why he's the 47th seed and not the 20th seed. He's not won these matches against the better players, even if he's playing pretty close to their level overall. A big opportunity for Dom Taylor. But again, he's going against a major televised tournament winner in Michael Smith. And then lastly, another match that might not jump off the page, same quarter, but it's one I want to see. Alan Suter against Jermaine Watamina. We've talked about Watamina quite a bit recently, but we haven't talked as much about Alan Suter, but he's won a title. He's rectified his game and secured his spot on tour next year after last year was a big regression. This is a tough ask for him, but he's playing well enough. And it's a match that, as I said, doesn't jump off the page, but it's a match that if you do end up watching it, you can be like, I'm glad I tuned in.
Yeah, some good picks there. And we've known the draw for a few weeks now. You'll have heard from one of our guests on this week's show, Nathan Aspinall, earlier. He said the banter had started between him and his first round opponent in Minehead, Chris Dobie, as soon as the last Players' Championship finished and the draw was confirmed. But now we've got the schedule of play from the PDC, so we know when all the matches in the first round are going to take place. So I'm going to do it slightly differently. I'm going to pick 4 matches, 2 from each of the 2 sessions, and then 1 from each of the 2 stages, the main stage and stage 2. So kicking off with the afternoon session on the main stage, I'm going to go with Martin Lukeman against Connor Scott. These two are practice partners, as you all know from Martin's interview on stage after he beat Rob Cross on Friday night at the Grand Slam. He was giving everyone a plug. He mentioned he practices a lot with Connor. They travelled up to Wolverhampton together as well for the Grand Slam. Martin, he's going to be on cloud 9 after that run to the final. And for Connor Scott, his debut in the Grand Slam couldn't have got off to a better start. Thrashed Dave Chisnell 5-0 with a 104 average, but it unravelled for him after that, losing to Richie Adalster and Ross Smith with 285 averages. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he responds and how Martin Lukeman follows up that Grand Slam final run. Stage 2 in the afternoon, my game to watch is going to be Dirk van Dijvenbode against Callum Ridds. Whether it ends up being 6-0 or 6-5, it's going to be over fairly quickly, isn't it? They both play at a decent pace, and I think that will be a very watchable game. Onto the evening session, when a lot of the big hitters are going to come out. Your Humphreys, your Littlers, playing against Rob Cross, Gary Andersons, Van Gerwens, but I'm picking out one of the ties that you picked out, and that is Chris Dobie against Nathan Aspinall, the number 1 seed against the number 64 seed, who just managed to get into the field for Minehead, and both, I'm sure, have got aspirations of being in the Premier League next year. So a deep run here, especially right at the end of the season, it could make all the difference. And it starts with a win on Friday night. Whoever can get through can hopefully go on that run for themselves and put themselves in contention for the Premier League, and probably more importantly, get some momentum going into the World Championships. And then lastly, another game that you mentioned is on stage 2 on Friday night. And speaking of the Premier League, Michael Smith, you'd think he needs a run either here or at the Worlds to keep his spot. And against Dom Taylor, someone that I think is going to have a run somewhere. I've been saying it a few times this year. Maybe it does come here, and this game being on stage 2 away from the bright lights of the main stage, it could be the perfect platform to him to cause the upset.